Over the last 18 months, we've seen an absolute explosion in the number and different variety of EVs available in the United States. But how child seat practical are mainstream vehicles like this Kia EV6? Let's find out. The EV6 is ostensibly a family-friendly two-row electric crossover, but as you can see, the format of the vehicle is perhaps a little bit more hatchback, sportback-like than RAV4 or CR-V-like, and you will notice that in the cargo area. We have a generous cargo area, but not as generous as you'll find in something like a Nissan Rogue or the new CR-V for 2023. However, you can still fit a decent number of child seats back here. The child seats we're going to be using today are Graco Classic Ride 50 seats. These are a convertible child seat. Obviously, keep in mind that if you're talking about a newborn child seat, some of the dimensions may be a little bit different here. On the inside of the EV6, we find latch anchors for just the outboard seating positions, so no latch anchors for the center seat, and these are the variety that are hidden right back there inside the seat. So to engage them, you have to sort of fish around with the latch anchor there, but they're pretty easy to deal with, pretty easy to remove as well. No plastic covers, so these are a great deal more comfortable to sit on if you're an adult than some of the models with those hard plastic covers and shrouds. Back here in the cargo area, we find top tether anchors for all three seating positions, and you'll notice the rear seats recline. The 40% side of the seat back is all the way back, and the 60% side is as upright as it can possibly get. Let's see how easy it is to remove the rear seat headrests, because if you're top tether anchoring, sometimes you want these to come out. Appears to be pretty easy. I have to tilt the seat forward, however, to complete it. And in case you're wondering, no, there really isn't anywhere in here to store the headrests. Under the cargo load floor right like that, you'll notice it doesn't actually fit under there. Although it is a bit of a long reach for some, having the hatchback here does make it easier to install and then tighten top tether anchors. For a lot of vehicles, especially vehicles with a more reclined seating position, rear-facing child seats can be pretty tricky, and that is a consideration in the EV6, especially if you plan on getting this powered moonroof. Getting this power moonroof does reduce headroom up front by about 2 inches. And that means that even though I might want to sit in a more upright position so I could try and save some of that area back there for a rear-facing child seat, doing so means that my head is basically touching the ceiling. And unfortunately, that really is the seating position required in order to get a rear-facing child seat like this to fit appropriately in here. A newborn seat might fit a little bit more easily because of the really high seat back up front. You'll notice the front seat has kind of an eccentric shape to it. The back of the seat sticks up and then the headrest is in front of that. If this was more of a traditional front seat design, you might have a little bit more room. Now, in this particular position, I could acceptably sit up front because if this child seat was firmly latched into place, it is just a little bit loose here, it would actually move back by about 1 inch, and that would be enough clearance to safely put a rear-facing seat right here with me driving at 6 feet tall. The next question I get asked frequently is, can you fit 3 child seats across the back? One would assume this is because people want to do carpools rather than having triplets. In the EV6, this would be a bit tricky. It's going to be a little bit easier in the closely related Ioniq 5, however, and it all has to do with the profile of the EV6. On the outside, you'll notice it has a very sexy, swoopy, bell-shaped profile to the rear, and that means that this side panel right here, this portion of the greenhouse, really tucks in a lot towards the inside. And as an adult, you'll really notice that. If you sit back here in the rear passenger area, there's only about 3/4 of an inch between my head and the side of the car. And that means less shoulder room, less headroom back here, and less room for those child seats to be across, because the child seat back actually comes up to right about my shoulder in here. Now, you can very easily put one child seat over there on that side, still have an adult over here, maybe a smaller child in the middle on a very small booster seat, but other than that, it would be a little bit tricky. And I have to say, trying to scoot over here to this middle seat position, it just wouldn't work. Due to the size of the EV6 and the relatively compact dimensions of the rear bench seat versus some of those larger crossovers, you'll notice that this center seat belt goes right down there into this space between the outboard seating position's backrest and seat bottom cushion. That means that if you're sitting in this seat right here as an adult or as an adolescent that doesn't need a child seat, this is kind of going to be digging into your side, although it's not in the way of the buckle. On the other hand, the shoulder belt for that center seat position comes out of the seat itself rather than out of the ceiling, and that means that this child seat is firmly in the center of the bench. It's not skewed to one side or the other. That's definitely a benefit. That belt position also means that the cargo area opening is square without any of those bumps in the way that house the seat belts. If you're the kind of family that puts a single child seat in the middle, this is a pretty common thing to do. You should know there's not a lot of room next to the child seat. So if you want to put your child in the middle and you want to sit next to them, this is going to be very tricky, even with child seats that are as relatively slim as this particular Graco child seat is. If you have some of those larger seats out there with the cup holders on the side, etc., there's really no way you'd get an adult next to it. Also, there's really no way you're ever going to be able to fold this 40% side of the seat back with a child seat in the middle. There's just not enough room. If you're shopping for a new electric vehicle as a family car, keep in mind that the rear seat dimensions can be a bit deceiving. The EV6 has an incredible amount of legroom, and that is absolutely not in question. Lots of legroom up front for people with longer legs, definitely lots of legroom in the back. But because of this really low slung roofline, that's really essential in order to give this the kind of electric range that it has, headroom is really dramatically reduced, and you'll notice that up front if you get the optional moonroof. If you're a taller person, skip the moonroof, you can sit in a more upright position, you'll certainly get more child seat room in the back. However, if you are a multi-child household, I would think twice about the EV6. You might want to consider something like a Ford Mustang Mach-E. It is certainly wider across the rear. It's not going to be as efficient as the EV6. So even though it has pretty similar range, it's going to take about 20% more electricity to go that same range. And that all has to do with the aerodynamic profile in this vehicle. Some of the numbers, again, can be a little bit deceiving. On the outside, this appears like it's not far off a RAV4 or a CR-V in terms of interior accommodation. However, keep in mind those aerodynamic realities, and that has resulted in a much narrower second row than you'll find in the average compact crossover. In fact, the rear bench seat, as far as child seat accommodations go, it's actually more similar to the average subcompact crossover in the United States, and I'm talking about relatively small vehicles like the Kia Soul or the Hyundai Venue. They actually have second rows that are about as narrow as the one that we find in the shoulder area in the EV6. And even though it has relatively generous hip room, that's not helping you at all when it comes to child seat installation. If you're the kind of parent that gravitates towards some of those really large and well-padded child seats, you should know that they're going to have to go in the center, and you really aren't going to be able to put anybody in the outboard seating positions because of the width of that rear bench seat. If you were to put one of those wider child seats in the rear bench on one side or the other, it would be really close to the door. The door may not close properly. You may not be able to latch that child seat properly in place. And then, of course, you'd be awfully close to the side airbags. Be sure and let me know what you think about the format of this video. We're going to try and change things up here when it comes to child seat reviews, add a few more animations and graphics, things like that. And always insert your comments down there so we can try and integrate them into future videos. Find me over at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those other social places, and of course check out the related channels as well. I'll see all of you later.